You know the phrase, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. When it comes to former Titans running back Chris Johnson, there's two numbers in particular that he's most remembered for. That's 4.24 for his record-breaking 40-yard dash and 2,000 for his 2,000 rushing yard season back in 2009. CJ2K is one of the most gifted running backs of our time, and the 6-year run he had in Tennessee is honestly kind of being slept on here in 2020. For a back with his type of speed who was only a little over 200 pounds, this dude was remarkably durable during the majority of his career. Through the first 7 years of his NFL career, this man only missed one game. And for an explosive back who got as many touches as Chris Johnson, this is an unbelievable stat, and it's an extremely underrated part of Chris Johnson's game. Despite that, he's got one of the most unique injury lists I've ever seen. A list that includes 2 neck surgeries before ever making it to the NFL, and a non-football related shoulder injury where he was tackled by a damn bullet. Chris was one of a kind with his golden smile and his locks flapping in the wind as he made spectacular plays every single week. So much like we did with Bob Sanders in the last video, let's shine a little light on the life and career of one of the most remarkable athletes the NFL has ever seen. This is what happened to Chris Johnson. Cue the Wayne. Support for today's video is brought to you by Manscaped.com. So a lot of cats might have got a little bit lax when it comes to grooming and general hygiene during this whole quarantine situation. If that's you, listen up. Manscaped is the only men's brand dedicated to below the waist hygiene. During my younger years, it took practice to master the proper techniques, and that meant trial and way too many errors. But tools like this provide the finesse and delicacy necessary to get the job done without all the hassle or the war wounds to show for it. This is the Lawnmower 3.0. It was just released by the Manscaped team, and it's got a nice ceramic blade and skin-safe technology to help prevent any friendly fire. We're talking an A1 premium product with 90-minute battery life, perfect for traveling, sturdy, well built. It's also got the LED light on there for added precision, which is dope. A1 product. And Manscaped taking a step further than that with ball deodorant and ball toner. You got an active lifestyle, you moving around, you in a hurry, yo, this could be clutch. Now Manscaped hooked your boy up with a 20% discount code, so all you gotta do is go to manscaped.com and use my code FlemLo20. That's gonna get you 20% off of your first order. Again, that's manscaped.com. Use my code FlemLo20 and they're gonna take care of you. Shout out to Manscaped once again for sponsoring the video. Without further ado, let's get it. Years before Chris DeJuan Johnson would be drafted by Tennessee, he suited up for a different Titans team, the Olympia Titans of Olympia High, located in Orlando, Florida. Chris was a standout athlete even as an underclassman, and the coach feared Chris would transfer after they went 1-9 in his sophomore season. The team would actually never become world beaters, but Chris would start to put up numbers starting his junior year, rushing for over 1,000 yards for the first time. Unsurprisingly, he excelled in track, finishing second at the 2004 Florida 4A Championship. Now y'all know them Florida boys be running for real, so who got first place when Chris got second? Future Olympic bronze medalist Walter Dix. Growing up, I thought dude down the street that raced in the road barefoot was fast, but this dude was really running against future Olympic sprinters. Despite that, Chris was barely a blip on the radar when it came to football. He had hoped his senior year would change that, but a leg fracture caused him to miss most of the year. Still, the few games he played that year was enough to land him on the all-county all-star team, a game he was fully healthy for and therefore brought home the MVP. That moved his recruiting status up a little. So I know most of y'all didn't play NCAA. Alright, so you know when you go in the recruiting pool, sorted by speed, and you got that 2-star cat up there at the top of the damn list, that's Chris Johnson. Super fast ass 2-star athlete who got all the potential in the world, but he gonna have to land with the right college coach to get the most out of him. That's exactly what happened. Chris got 3 college offers to play running back: UConn, Eastern Kentucky, and ECU. There were actually a few other schools interested, but they wanted to move Chris to defense. But dude was so married to playing the running back position, he didn't even go on visits to those other schools. And this is honestly something that he would admit he regretted years later. In high school, Chris developed a nervous tic where he involuntarily shakes his head every few seconds.
What do you think the number 2000 would mean then?
And while I couldn't find any official sources to confirm this story, here's what I found scattered across the internet in random comment sections and forums. It's been said by people claiming to be former teammates of Chris that he had some type of neck surgery in high school, and the surgery or whatever injury caused him to need the surgery in the first place left a bit of nerve damage, and that's what causes the twitching. Again, these are unconfirmed claims, but I checked a few sources and it does line up. According to WebMD, when nerve cells are damaged, it changes the way they communicate with each other and with the brain. Twitches and spasms can be warning signs that this common condition, neuropathy, is affecting the nerves that control your muscles. Some people are born with it, but it can happen because of an injury, and they go on to list some other ways it can happen as well. So it definitely does add up. Also, Chris had another neck surgery in college, and this one was actually reported and can be confirmed. This could have been an attempt to clean up something from the first surgery, or maybe he re-injured his neck, I'm not sure. Some people have speculated that Chris has Tourette's, and that could be the case, but I choose to believe the surgery or whatever caused him to need the first surgery is the culprit here. Chris's college years saw him develop and round out his game. He honed his speed, of course, but he also improved his understanding of the running back position. When you watch Chris run, of course his speed jumps out, but his ability to set up blocks, his vision, his patience are all traits, along with his speed, that made him into the elite back that he became. During his college days, Chris was fortunate to have coaches smart enough to allow this unbelievably gifted player to actually spread his wings and make an impact in not only the rushing game, but the passing game and the return game. In each of Chris's first 2 college seasons, he gained 1,500 or more all-purpose yards. Following his sophomore season, Chris underwent the neck surgery that we alluded to earlier. To be clear, this was the confirmed neck surgery that we do know about, and if the rumors are true, this would have been Chris's second neck surgery. He missed the entire spring and ended up on the pitch count during the fall. His carries were basically cut in half and his numbers were obviously down. And just like that, Chris found himself in a familiar situation. He had 1 year left and he needed to make something happen. So going into his senior season, Chris Johnson came in as an all-conference first team kick return specialist, and he did not disappoint from a kick return standpoint. He ended up gaining over 1,000 yards on kick returns alone. That by itself would have honestly been enough to get him drafted in a later round. But what he did at the running back position would catch a lot of people completely off guard. And the crazy thing is, this was only a glimpse into what this man was actually capable of. During Chris's senior season, he rushed for 1,423 yards and 17 touchdowns, all while averaging 6 yards per carry. For perspective on what an explosion this was, he scored more rushing touchdowns during his senior season than all 3 of his other years combined. And he damn near rushed for the same amount of yards as he did during his first 3 seasons combined as well, only off by 136 yards. This guy Chris Johnson, the former 2-star recruit, a 2nd to 3rd round projection in the 2008 NFL draft. At this point, he was seen as a high caliber 3rd down back who could also be a kick return specialist. That would make him an extremely valuable player on the next level, but even that was grossly understating the value he'd actually bring. NFL teams had their doubts. Chris didn't exactly play against the stiffest competition in college, so many wondered, would he be able to compete athletically on the NFL level? On February 24th, 2008, Chris would line up in an attempt to answer this question once and for all. A little over 4 seconds later, dude had run the fastest time in NFL combine history. And the question quickly shifted to this: will players in the NFL be athletic enough to compete with Chris Johnson? The record has stood for nearly 20 years since 1999, and Chris would hold the record until 2017 when John Ross took the title. And I want to spend a little time on this because there have not been very many NFL players to run in the 4.2s, at least since electronic times took over. And of all the guys who have actually accomplished this amazing feat, Chris Johnson is the only one to weigh over 200 pounds. The only other running back to run in the 4.2 since the NFL switched to electronic times was Dre Archer. And he was 30 pounds lighter and definitely not a 3-down back like Chris Johnson. When you consider the fact that damn near every other guy that ran in the 4.2s is a lot lighter than Chris, it actually makes the feat even more impressive. But while some 40-yard dash champs struggle to translate that speed into NFL productivity, Chris Johnson was the opposite. During Chris's rookie year, he split carries with USC legend LenDale White. LenDale was coming off a 1,000-yard season of his own, so it couldn't have been easy when he had to give up carries to accommodate Chris. Still, the two became cool and earned the nickname Smash and Dash for LenDale's power and Chris's speed. That first year, they both had great seasons, with Chris rushing for 1,200 yards and 9 TDs as a rookie, and LenDale pitching in with 773 yards of his own, as well as an impressive 15 touchdowns, the most in the AFC that year. Still, the following season, Chris became the full-time featured back, with LenDale only getting a measly 64 carries, down from 200 the year before. Smash and Dash was now just Dash, and Chris Johnson was fully unleashed on the NFL. Before 2009, there were only 5 players to rush for over 2,000 yards in a single season: O.J. Simpson, Eric Dickerson, Barry Sanders, T.D. Terrell Davis, and Jamal Lewis. In 2009, Chris Johnson became only the 6th player in league history to accomplish the great feat. And even though he wasn't the first or the last player to do it, there is something about Chris's 2,000-yard season that kind of separates him from the other guys on this list. See, none of the other 2,000-yard backs also had 500 yards receiving during the same year that they rushed for the 2,000. This is the reason I feel like Chris Johnson breaking Marshall Faulk's record that year is actually a bigger deal than the 2,000 yards. Don't get it twisted, the 2,000 yards is crazy. It's great. It's amazing. It's elite. But what I'm saying is him breaking Marshall Faulk's scrimmage yard record that season is even more impressive. Till this day, he still holds the record for most total scrimmage yards in a single season with 2,509 yards during that 2009 season. I mean, this man really had one of the great NFL seasons of all time, after which he earned his nickname CJ2K. He was considered for MVP, but Peyton Manning ended up getting it. I think the thing that really hurt him was the fact that the Titans were 8-8 that year. Had they been a better team, it's hard for me to imagine him not getting the MVP. I still think you can make a great case that he should have gotten it that year, because what he did has never actually been done by any other player. Chris Johnson's career kind of gets slept on. We remember those crazy numbers and we feel like it was just a flash in the pan. But every year for the first 6 years of his career, this man was over 1,000 yards rushing, and he contributed in the pass game as well. And like I mentioned in the intro, of course, Chris's greatest asset was his speed, but his most slept on trait was his durability. First off, when it just come to durability, dude had so much working against him. He's one of the fastest players to ever play in the NFL. We all know that when you're one of these hyper speed guys, soft tissue injuries, oh, they love you. Look at John Ross. Remember Deshaun Jackson, Marquise Goodwin, Reggie Bush? A lot of these hyper speed guys are very, very often hurt. Then you add into the fact that he played the running back position. So the second fastest 40-yard dash ever, and he was a full-time 3-down running back. That's a recipe for injury. I don't care what you say. Despite that, he only missed 1 game in his first 7 years as a starting back, and is honestly unbelievable. 2 young running backs who I love in today's game, Saquon Barkley and Alvin Kamara, have played for 2 and 3 seasons respectively. They've each already missed 3 games apiece. Again, this is not a knock on these players, it's just the nature of the position. Another popular explosive running back from around the time Chris played was Reggie Bush. I love Reggie, but in his first 7 seasons, he missed 21 games, bro. So show Chris some love for his durability is all I'm saying. I know for a fact that 2,000-yard season had to take a lot out of him. But even after that, he kept churning out 1,000-yard season after 1,000-yard season after 1,000-yard season. For 6 straight years, he rushed for at least 1,000 yards, and his productivity did not drop off until year 7, when he went to the Jets in 2014. And even then, he averaged 4.3 yards per carry, which is right in line with his career average of 4.5. He had definitely began to lose some of his explosiveness, but he was still a really solid back, gaining 663 yards on only 155 carries, by far the lowest in his career. Chris may not have known it at the time, but that offseason, he'd reach an even lower point. That offseason, Chris was involved in a shooting in his hometown of Orlando, Florida. Reportedly, an unknown vehicle pulled up next to Chris and two of his friends at a red light and opened fire. One of Chris's best friends who was in the car with him lost his life that night. Chris was hit in the shoulder. The bullet wound caused nerve damage to his right hand, and he feared he'd never play football again. Chris would later admit that this was one of the toughest times in his life, as he was dealing with the loss of his friend and what he thought was the end of his career. The two men suspected of shooting Chris and his friends were killed the following year in 2016. And according to court docs that have recently come out, an informant has alleged that Chris may have paid money to make this happen. Again, these are just accusations. This came out in April of this year. It's something I really didn't want to touch until more facts come out. But at the time of me recording this video, that has not happened. The important thing to note that, again, these are allegations from a single informant, and Chris has not been formally charged. He also adamantly denies all involvement, so he's innocent until proven guilty. We'll just have to see how this thing plays out. Let's pick up the story back in 2008, right after the shooting where Chris lost his friend and sustained nerve damage in his right hand. Surviving that situation really woke Chris up. He had been slacking a bit, feeling his career was on a downturn. He was no longer getting as many opportunities in the offense to do his thing. And dude was feeling a little bit jaded, but after the shooting, it really woke him up, changed his perspective, and once he was able to grieve and actually cope with the loss of his friend, it actually gave him a new lease on life, because he knew that that could have been him easily. Through rehab, he regained strength in his right hand and was ready when the Arizona Cardinals called him up to join their team. With a new focus on the game, in Chris's 8th season, 2015, CJ2K made a resurgence. His top end speed wasn't what it once was, but he was still a really solid contributor, rushing for 800 yards and 3 touchdowns. He definitely would have gone over 1,000 yards that year, but that durability that we raved about earlier, well, in year 8, that was pretty much gone. Chris ended up breaking his leg in week 12 and missed the rest of the season on injured reserve. He barely played over the next 2 seasons before eventually signing a one-day contract with Tennessee and retiring as a Titan. The first several years of Chris's retirement was pretty quiet. He did a few interviews where he expressed regret for not taking those visits way back in the day, because he said that had he played cornerback, he believes he would have had a longer career. He expressed displeasure with the way the running back position is treated in the NFL. They don't get paid as well compared to other positions, and they have shorter careers, and he's 1000% right. Yo, given Chris's athletic ability, I have no doubt that had he gone to college and been trained to play cornerback, he could have found his way to the NFL at that position for sure. But I gotta say, the impact I believe he made on the game at the running back position would have definitely been missed. Chris Johnson was more than just a good running back in his era. Dude was elite, and given his play style, he could still be elite in today's game. CJ2K will likely get snubbed by the Hall of Fame voters. There's unfortunately a whole bunch of really good running backs still waiting to get in, but the man deserves consideration at the very least. But until then, little videos like this will just have to do. My name is FlemLo Raps. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. I'll holler at you next time.
Yeah, well, I'm no quitter, 'cause I'ma go get